From Grand Theft Auto
Not my bus!
to destruction of property. It's clear that a lot of crimes are committed in Elmore, but then there are some weird instances where someone in town breaks a law and they don't get punished for it. It really blurs the line between what's illegal and what's not illegal. So today, we're gonna go through all of the commonly committed crimes in the show to find out exactly where that line is, along with what the laws really are in Elmore. Starting with jaywalking, which is a fun place to start because it shows how insane the justice system is. In the episode The Law, Gumball and Darwin say cops aren't cool after Donut Cop writes them a ticket for jaywalking. This gives us our first road-related law in Elmore, which is unusually strict, as Gumball literally only put his toe on the road before Donut Cop started speeding down the road to write up Gumball's ticket, gun in hand.
That's it, I'm crossing!
Freeze, you hoodlums!
In fact, this was probably more dangerous to the citizens on the road than Gumball's quote-unquote jaywalking, because of how no one would have expected the car to be at that speed. Usually, cops justify the speed of their car based on the severity of the crime they need to attend to, but this is literally nothing. It also brings up the question of, is this even jaywalking? Because as we can see, he just dipped his toe into the street. Surprisingly, no one has tested this, probably because they don't want to get a ticket to prove the realism of a Gumball episode. So instead, I looked at Wikipedia, which still didn't give me my answer, but I did find something interesting. A Boston Globe reporter tried to get a ticket for jaywalking, so they did a bunch of things, like walking in the middle of the street and walking a red pedestrian light. Despite doing all of this, they didn't get a ticket, even when they did this in front of the police officers, which means that Elmore PD mogs the Boston Police Department, at least when it comes to jaywalking. Finally, I decided to check the law itself, and actually got something. Whenever it talks about jaywalking, they only deem it a crime when the perpetuator is actually walking. Gumball clearly wasn't walking here, meaning that in Elmore, you can get a ticket for not only jaywalking, but just for touching the road. Moving on from jaywalking, we have the other most common road-related incident, speeding. We've seen characters in the show speed all the time, from driving their loved ones to the hospital, to just dropping the kids off at school. The Wattersons always seem to find a reason to speed. They have also sped in almost every vehicle known to man, from cars, to trucks, to a bucket, to literally nothing. Unlike jaywalking, the police don't seem to mind speeding as much. For example, in the episode The 8, Miss Simeon comes to the Wattersons' house to try to win over their trust. The Wattersons think that she's just being nice, but eventually she reveals her true colors, as she just wanted a letter of recommendation. However, once the family found this out, it was too late and she had already got the letter. So Nicole speeds off the highway to get the letter. They do all sorts of crazy stunts on the road, but they don't get chased by the police at all. Similarly, in the episode The Copycats, Gumball's Chinese clones keep copying everything they're doing, but for some reason, in order to get off of them, the family decides to do the most dangerous stunts they can try, and well, murder them. However, none of this works, so they decide to drive a truck off a bridge, while also speeding. But I don't think that speeding is reserved for vehicles, because in the episode The Curse, Gumball speeds and tries to cross a gap in the bridge, in a bucket. In all of these chases, if the cops had actually intervened, not only would they have been doing their jobs and stopped the speeders, but they also would have been able to save Gumball, Miss Simeon, and Gumball's Chinese clones from falling off the bridge. Although it might seem that the cops just don't care about speeding, in the previously mentioned episode The Law, Donut Cop and Gumball go on a crime spree, which included speeding, which causes the commissioner to call them out. He specifically mentions speeding and revokes Donut Cop's badge. We also see in this episode that there are speed cameras in Elmore, so speeding does exist, but it's only enforced sometimes. Our next category is theft, and there's no better place to start than robbery. The first proper robbery we see is in the episode The Spoon, where Sal Leftham decides that he's gonna rob a gas station. But this is no regular gas station, because it has a safe with a whole lot of money. Sal knows that he's not gonna be able to get the money by just asking for it nicely, so he pulls out his spoon. And no, that's not just me being sarcastic. He actually pulls out his spoon and literally threatens Larry with a spoon.
Use this.
Oh my gosh, he's got a spoon!
Larry is absolutely terrified, but he's still not letting up. Just as Sal is emptying the cash register, Gumball and Darwin come back after finding a card for their mom, and Sal tells them that he works for a charity that gives money to old people. So Gumball and Darwin, for some reason, believe this and go to find things to give to the charity, and they even find the safe in the process. Once Gumball and Darwin find the safe, they are determined to get it open and start bashing it, but then the safe says all they needed to do, surprisingly, was just ask nicely. The kids bring the bags to Sal, but they see him holding their family and Larry in rope with tape on their mouth. Gumball and Darwin run off, with Sal chasing them, until eventually they're cornered into the store shelves. Sal pulls out the spoon again and threatens the kids, but then suddenly Nicole sneaks behind him and knocks him out with a sausage. When all seems good, Donut Cop shows up and sees Nicole holding the sausage with the kids, and Sal's knocked out, so she gets sent to jail on her birthday. Although this is a complete injustice, it does show that the Elmore police do take armed robbery seriously. In fact, even using a spoon can be considered armed in Elmore. But next, let's take a look at bank robbery. In the episode The Heist. In this episode, Richard gets a new bike helmet and wears it to the bank. For some reason, the bank tellers think he's a robber and gives him all the money, and he goes on his merry way. However, the bank calls the police on him, which leads to a large police chase, which Richard has no idea about, and somehow outmaneuvers the police without even trying. When Richard gets back home, the family tries to devise a plan to get the money back without Richard being arrested. They go back to the bank, and Richard asks the cops what they would do if they find out somebody had stolen the money on accident, to which they say the same punishment would be 10 times worse if the money was stolen on accident. So in Elmore, the crime of robbery, whether it's an armed robbery or a bank robbery, is not only punished, but it's so heavily punished that even if you do it by accident, you'll not only go to prison, but it'll be 10 times worse. The next type of theft we're going to be looking at is Grand Theft Auto. Now, you may think that this belongs in the road-related crimes, but come on, it is theft in the name. This is another crime that the Wattersons love, and we see it in all forms, from hijacking to just straight up breaking into a vehicle and stealing it. The citizens of Elmore are very familiar with this crime. However, despite how insane the crime is, law enforcement seems to be quite indifferent to it. In the episode The Return, Richard forgets where he left the kids last night. He searches everywhere until he remembers that he left them in a ball pit in the mall. So Richard goes out to find them, only to find out that Larry had the ball pit shipped off because it was a safety hazard. So Richard follows the semi-truck, carrying the ball pit all the way to the container port. He then steals a crane to find the kids, and uses it to put the crate containing the kids back onto the semi-truck, which he then steals and slams into the school, bringing the kids to safety. The whole journey to the school, he goes without a single cop following him over the stolen truck, or the missing kids, or speeding. The GTA IRL continues in the episode The Finale, where Richard just hijacks a random bus and drives it into a pool.
Not my bus!
Despite having his own car, which actually does get him in legal trouble. But what doesn't get them in trouble is later in the episode when all the Wattersons steal the mobility scooters from the elderly. Now, as stupid as the cops seem, they don't entirely ignore the theft of vehicles, because in the episode The Flakers, Gumball, Darwin, and Anais need to fix up the entire house to find Richard before Nicole comes back home. So in order to stall her, Darwin calls the police and reports the car is stolen. And with zero evidence, they arrest Nicole. So sometimes the police will literally just ignore theft of vehicles, and other times they'll go crazy, arresting anyone with no evidence. But the final type of theft that we're going to be looking at is the most pressuring and important type of theft: identity theft. In the episode The Finale, Gumball, Darwin, and Richard try to figure out how to pass off all of Richard's traffic tickets while also avoiding Gumball and Darwin's explosion. They decide to create a fake school where Gumball and Darwin can pose as Bobber and Alan to try to get the parents to admit their children into this fake school in order to con the parents out of their money. This doesn't work though, as the police take identity theft extremely seriously. So seriously, in fact, that Gumball, Darwin, and Richard are taken to prison. Another example of identity theft was in the previously mentioned episode The Spoon. As we explained, the reason why Gumball was fooled by Sal was that he posed as a charity worker. So this is actually an extremely serious offense, as fraudulent charities aren't just liable in civil court, but also criminal court for any damage caused. However, when the donut cop arrests him in the end, it seems like he doesn't care about this. Instead of choosing to focus on the robbery itself, similarly in the Flakers, while the donut cop is quick to arrest Nicole, he doesn't follow up on Darwin, who faked the call, even though faking that you're a victim of a crime and making a fake tip is illegal. He doesn't care. Well, this just may be because donut cop thinks that robbery is a more serious crime than identity theft. I can't just accept this explanation because millions of families are affected by identity theft. It's not a joke.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim.
But now, let's move on to the more serious crimes, as we can talk about the different violent crimes. Starting off with child/animal abuse. The reason why I say slash is because Darwin, despite being constantly referred to as Richard and Nicole's kid, is actually legally still their pet fish. But for the rest of this entry, I'll just be referring to the crime as child abuse for convenience. The crime the Watterson parents constantly commit, which the police just don't particularly care about, is child neglect. Going back to the spoon, the whole reason why Gumball and Darwin are in the gas station to begin with is because Richard sent them there unsupervised to get the gift that he forgot to get for Nicole's birthday. It's one thing leaving your kid, but it's a whole other issue sending them off to danger. Plus, it was in the middle of the night. And speaking of leaving your kid, in the previously mentioned episode, The Return, Richard left the kids in the ball pit, where they were struggling for their lives, drowning in the pit. And when Richard came to get them, instead of opening the shipping container, he slammed it against the school so they would be at the front gate when Nicole came to pick them up. But don't think that Richard is the only perpetuator of this, because in the episode The Authority, Granny JoJo comes to visit after getting injured by a satellite dish after it fell on his head. Granny JoJo proceeded to scare all the kids and Richard from doing anything, and they basically become brainless. Nicole decided that the only safe thing to do was to put them all into the car and make themselves drive to the store, but they basically have the brains of babies, so this was the equivalent of sending them to their death. But the parents' wrongdoings don't just end with neglect, as they also physically harm them. In the episode The Remote, the entire family wants to watch their show in the evening, but since they can't all watch television at the same time, they have to fight for the remote. At the end of the episode, they basically have an all-out brawl over the remote, in which Nicole and Richard physically harm the kids over the remote.
Cutie bet starts in 5 minutes.
However, through all of these events, the cops don't do anything. But in the episode The Apprentice, Gumball sneaks into Penny's dad, Patrick's car, and tries to help with a business meeting. When Patrick leaves the car for 1 second, the police come around and are about to arrest Patrick for leaving a minor unattended in the car. So, abandoning your kids, sending them off to their death, and literally beating them isn't a crime, but leaving them unattended in a car is. Just wow. Next, we have regular, just assault/battery. It seems like in almost every single episode, a character is battering another, and sort of just gets away with it. We're gonna be looking at the most egregious examples of this, and see whether the cops do anything about it. In the episode The Loophole, Gumball and Darwin try to get out of doing their homework by helping Bobbert be less dangerous. One of the prompts that they give Bobbert to follow, in order to be safe, is to follow the law no matter what. This leads Bobbert to follow the laws from all states of the US, and since he has to follow the law no matter what, he physically forces everyone around him to. This includes burning Miss Simeon's hair and shoving a laser in Gary's face so that he won't slurp wrong. Despite doing all of this, the police do not show up to do anything about it, but it only gets worse, as later in the episode, Bobbert was given the prompt to protect all life at all costs. The only way which Bobbert deems it feasible is to end all of mankind. How does he plan to do this? Well, by setting off a nuclear bomb. Gumball and Darwin arrive literally just as the bomb is about to go off and are able to revert him back to normal. But even though he was about to kill everyone on Earth, he still doesn't get any punishment from the law. Another episode where the threat to human life is just ignored by the police is in another Bobbert episode, The Bet. In this episode, Gumball wins a bet with Bobbert, and he becomes Gumball's personal assistant for the whole week. Gumball thinks that this will be the time of his life, but little does he know, this fun would come at the expense of almost ending the lives of his teachers and himself. When Gumball told Bobbert he thought there should be less skaters, Bobbert literally shot Mr. Small, who was wearing skates, with a laser. When Gumball said he wanted Rocky to get lost, he literally threw him out of the window. And finally, when Gumball told Bobbert jokingly to terminate himself, Bobbert hunted him down with a laser and almost killed him. But despite all of this, the police did nothing. But it seems that the police just generally don't take assault seriously, as in the law, the commissioner was quick to point out all the crimes Donut Cop committed on the street, but left out how he literally tased Bobbert for no reason. So I guess in Elmore, there's no such thing as assault, but it also seems that there's no such thing as murder, because in the episode The Recipe, Gumball and Darwin have no idea how Anton came back after he seemingly died. So in order to find out, they decide to, well, kill Anton a bunch in broad daylight. However, the police literally seem to have their eyes closed, as they walk free every time. But now, let's move on to kidnapping. The first and most hilarious example was in the episode The Sidekick. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin get into a big argument, as Darwin thinks he's just being used as a sidekick by Gumball. This leads Darwin to abandon Gumball on a mission, where they need to get their game back from Tobias. Gumball decides, in order to stop any more drama, to just let Darwin lead this mission. He gives Darwin some advice to get the game back from Tobias, to take something of his for ransom. So Darwin decides the only logical thing to take was Mrs. Wilson, Tobias's mom.
You stole his mom!
This infuriates Gumball for understandable reasons, and Gumball tries to disguise her in order to bring her back without any suspicion. Although this does show Darwin at his dumbest, it does show that the cops actually do care about kidnapping and consider it a crime. In fact, they even came across Donut Cop's car and try to hide it from him. To further support this, looking back at the spoon, Sal did kidnap Larry and the Watterson family and get punished for it. However, don't put your trust in Elmore PD just yet, because in the previously mentioned episode, The Bet, Gumball told Principal Brown to get lost and Miss Simeon to chill out, which causes Bobbert to kidnap both of them and put them in the woods and a freezer respectively. Both kidnappings did not lead to any sort of punishments by the law, so there is some kidnapping leeway. But our final category is just one big catch-all term, destruction of property. And let's start in the episode The Finale. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin are instructed by Anais to destroy everything and anything. So they go to their school and set off the sprinklers and literally explode the hallways using the fire extinguisher, while all of the students are running off in fear of their lives. They also summon Kenneth and enrage Hector, which causes both of them to run out into public, destroying all the houses and buildings in the area.
It's pretty bad!
Before then, they fight each other like Godzilla, and earlier in the episode, they destroy Penny's family pool by driving a car into it. In episodes prior, like the Colossus, Gumball said to Hector that his mom made him super boring. This caused Hector to get super angry and almost destroy everything in it. Then we have the episode The Microwave, where Gumball and Darwin actually create Kenneth, and though for the most part, the damage is mostly to the Watterson family, and not the general public. At the end of the episode, Gumball and Darwin give Kenneth a second chance, which leads him to become even bigger than before, and destroy the entire town. Other examples where the Wattersons destroy things are in The Bros. In order to save Penny and Gumball's relationship, Darwin makes little paper flowers that lead to a liquid nitrogen lake, and Gumball inside a makeshift log cabin. The liquid nitrogen causes the paper to catch fire, and eventually lead Penny's house to catch on fire as well. And in the episode The Console, Gumball, Darwin, and Anais get sucked into a video game, where they have to fight off different monsters and bosses. Before they fight the final boss, they grind experience points from the park, which basically just meant destroying the park and all of its inhabitants. As for law enforcement's involvement, in this, they're actually quite respondent with Gumball and Darwin, dealing with serious consequences as a result of their actions regarding the school, Kenneth and Hector, which shows that when it comes to destruction of property, although they don't carry jail time, they do get hit with pretty hefty financial consequences, which almost puts all of them into financial ruin. But because you made it to the end of the video, you should go down, like, and subscribe. And if you're still here, click the video on screen. I'm sure you'll love it.